the things that we've said often is seek first to understand, then be understood, right? So don't think that you think that you know what they want, right? Because that puts you in a position of, again, you know it, and you think they don't. Welcome to Real Estate for Real People. This is my co-host, Marianne, my better half and wife, business partner, and all around great woman.
It must be just after Mother's Day.
It must be. And I am Brad Whitaker, and thank you for tuning in. So today, we're going to talk about communication and some of the things or the pitfalls that you can run into, not just in real estate, but in life, right?
Yeah.
Whether you work with your spouse or you have someone of the opposite sex that you work with closely, sometimes the communication styles between the two get a little out of whack. So we're going to talk about some of the things that we use here at our firm to communicate with our agents, and then we'll touch on maybe a second podcast, I don't know, but we'll touch on some of the things that we do to communicate to make sure that we're, up to speed on what's going on with each other.
On the same page, so to speak.
Yes, on the same page. So, so we'll start right out with the technology piece. So what's important when you're looking for an app regarding communication with either a single or a group?
So I would back up a step, actually.
Oh, would you?
Yeah, so why is it important to even pay attention to communication? Right?
Oh, you want to get philosophical right out of the gate. Okay, let's go.
Yeah.
I
mean, I always go back to education because that was, 30 years of my life. And when you're leading a large group, whether it's a group of 25 kids and their parents or a group of 60 employees or whatever, why is it important to even be aware and cognizant of the communication plan or flow? And so, ultimately, if you and I look at all our communication pieces, the whole idea around it is to have everybody have all the information they need and be able to do the best job with the information that they're given, right?
Yeah.
So to that end, some of the pieces that we have found work well in our firm, and there are all sorts of things out there for communication tools and apps. Some cost money, some are free. I think when you're making a decision about that, one of the biggest pieces is what's going to work best for the size of your company or your office, and the adoption rate of a tool.
Oh, yeah.
So
that's abysmal, really, in our industry.
Well, it can be. What we know is that when people are learning something new, if they can tie it to something they already know or are familiar with, then there's a much higher rate of adoption, a much quicker take on it. So when we were planning how to communicate with all of our agents, and the other piece that we had to keep in mind, not just with all of our agents now, but in the future as we grow.
Right.
What's going to be something that can be scalable, yeah, and sustainable. So we went, as a piece of formal communication tool, we decided to adopt something called Workplace. And Workplace is maybe not a byproduct, but a parallel product to Facebook, but only for Workplace.
It's a closed system.
It is a closed system. But one of the benefits about that is that we can have different channels within that tool. So we have a channel for both sides of the pond in our case because we have offices in Hawaii and here in Washington. we have a channel just for Washington and then for each one of the individual offices. So that allows us to channel the information and the communication to specific groups that it applies to. The other piece about Workplace that we are just now really starting to focus in on and adopt is the chat that goes with Workplace. Now we could use a texting app,
Slack, something like that.
Slack, something like that. But because we already have Workplace and our folks are already in it, it's an easy shift to adopt that texting piece of Workplace. The other thing about that is, Brad and I have iPhones, not to make a commentary on the type of phone they use, but it's really, you can have chat, right? You can have groups. The challenge with that is if you have Android and iPhone users, you can't add people to the group or take people out without totally reconfiguring the group.
And losing all that text thread.
Yes. So using the chat app through Workplace, it allows us to be really flexible. We can add people right away, and so that's less work for the two of us. It keeps it consistent for the agents, and consistency is key in anything that we're doing that's going to be sustainable. So that seems to be, and I'm not going to lie, Workplace, it took a bit to get people up to speed and adopting it, even though it was a familiar structure.
Because it feels and looks very Facebooky.
It does.
Yeah.
But there are some pieces to it that I think have been really beneficial to our offices, in that just like Facebook, you can have files that you can attach to a group. So if we have information that we want to blast out in a PDF, it's really easy to do that.
Right.
And it will be housed there.
Links to websites, all that kind of
All
fun
that
stuff.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
All that kind of thing. So as far as office communication, formal, I mean, yes, we still do the emails. We still have email groups. We do that through Gmail. So we have a variety of things that we can do, but we have seen probably the most benefit and in quick communication, quick responses through Workplace.
You know, some of the things that I think about, you know, I am probably guilty of this more than most, is that our email inboxes tend to get stacked up full of stuff. Whereas people, when you've got Workplace or the Workplace chat open, it gives you that alert right away. And we have a number of our agents who are just, I mean, it's almost like Pavlovian. I mean, they hear that ding and, they look to see what's been posted, because it could be an agent saying, you know, my kid's been hurt at the playground, I need to go, can somebody cover floor? Or it could just be something like, hey, I need a listing sheet for the other MLS, I'm not a member, can somebody help me? And so it's an incredible tool that allows people to kind of come in and support others. And most people choose not to ignore it. Other people, you know, they can't stand all the dings, so they turn the notifications off. And, you know, there's, like we talked about adoption, right? There's always that. But it's people are finding that it's a much better way to communicate than email or even text, really, because of the way you can manipulate the groups and not lose the threads. Because if somebody says, hey, who's a good plumber, who's a good landscaper, and people pour their information into that thread, the second you delete that to add one person, all that information's gone. Mm-hmm. So it's super helpful, and the agents are finally really kind of grabbing a hold of that, which is, I think, excellent.
Well, and the other thing about, just like in Facebook on Workplace, so you used an example of plumber. Mm-hmm. So maybe I don't need that right now, but being able to go back and search
right
all the text or all the postings about plumbers and pulling those up and reviewing, is this information still accurate? At least it gives them a place to start when they're searching for something. So yeah, it's been a good tool for us.
Yeah.
I would go back and do it again. Now, having said that, people who are listening on the podcast or watching, there is a minimal cost for each agent to be a part of that. But so I think right now it's like $3 a month or something. So it can add up. So plan it into your budget. But for us, it's worth it. By miles, yeah.
Yeah, because, just for ease of use and communication company-wide, or, we even have groups that aren't office groups, like we have a mentor group. And as new agents come in and out of that group, it's important that we can text them, communicate with them specifically, because their needs are going to be different than the whole group. So, that's really good. So let's get off of a communication tool and let's get onto a planning tool. Your favorite thing. And
Calendar.
mine, the calendar. So, so we both have iPhones.
We do.
So we have our joint calendars. We use the Google Calendar for the office. But we've used the joint calendar. Now, I guess, so a couple of years back when we still had a lot of kids at home, or kids at home at all, everybody got a color on the calendar, right?
Well, and not only that, when they were younger, they didn't have phones.
Right.
So this started off as a laminated wall calendar.
Right. Yeah, so each kid had their own color of ink on the dry erase.
And so did we.
And so we just kind of morphed that into turning the calendars on our iPhones to different colors for different groups and different things. And then we share everything. There are some people who get really kind of offended or triggered or whatever the phrase is, because they're like, you don't need to know what I'm doing. I just don't know that that's a big, I guess if you got something to hide, it's a big deal. But if you don't have anything to hide, I think you're really kind of doing yourself a disservice by going there and, claiming privacy.
Well, I think it's not just you're doing yourself a disservice. I think you're doing your relationship a disservice.
Right.
Well, and in our case, because we do everything together, live, work, and play, I don't know how that would work.
Well,
very well.
Our kids, they were really kind of weirded out by it at first. Because,
they were.
You could see what everyone was doing and there was, no privacy. But now that one of our kids is in the business with us, finds that pretty valuable because all of a sudden he knows exactly where we are. So if he needs us, he knows if we're in a meeting or we're not, or we're traveling or we're not, or whatever. So, it's perspective, I think, a lot of the time, how you get used to that. But so the Google Calendar takes a little bit of a little effort to get set up, but super valuable. And we use that more as a company-wide distribution as opposed to hooking everybody up on their iPhone because not everybody has an iPhone.
Right.
So talk to us about the Google Calendar and how we use that or why it's important to have a joint calendar for your company. And
there are a lot of different ways that you can do calendar for an office. Again, the benefit of Google is in our company, most of the technology pieces are geared around Google Chrome. They were formatted for that. So it's just a natural thing for us to use those connected pieces like Gmail, like Google Calendar. And I think one of the important things about communication, and the calendar is one of them, is that people often need to see things at least 3 times in order to get it embedded in their brain at some level. So Brad does a monthly and then a weekly kind of breakdown of events in workplace, but we also have those same events on the Google Calendar. So they're seeing it multiple times. And everybody has the same information.
Right.
So each, again, just like in workplace, we have a calendar for the entirety of Pacifica, and then we have calendar pieces for each office because the events in Long Beach are different oftentimes than they are in Centralia or they are in Longview. So being able to, one, scale, discern for different spaces and places and groups, Gmail allows us to do that. one of the challenges is that, as most people probably know, you can have multiple Google accounts. So in order to get access to a calendar, you have to be in the right Google account when you are looking at that or adopting it,
Right.
Accepting the invitation. That tends to be the biggest
Sticking point for most people is
Yeah.
they try and
Trying
and
to-
do it all on their phone.
Yeah.
And it's really kind of, you got to do it on your computer first
Yeah.
and then pull it into your phone.
Yeah, so there are some pieces, and that goes on us as leaders and trainers, to make sure that people have access to that. So
And part
it's
of
just an
our
awareness.
part of our mission here, our goal is to help people become a better version of themselves professionally, personally. And so to help people figure out systems to communicate and to stay organized is kind of part of the whole goal for us, is to, because we don't want anybody to say, well, I didn't know that was happening, right? And so now we can say, well, did you check your Google Calendar? Well, I don't have my Google Calendar. Why don't you have a Google Calendar, right? So then we can walk them through the process. You're usually the one who helps them set it up on their computer. So yeah, it's again, it's just about becoming that next level real estate agent, that next level human being, whatever it is, to become the better version of yourself. So all these little things kind of add up to be better. So as we go from bigger topics to more smaller topics, one of the things I want to talk about is joint text threads.
Oh yes.
Because you and I have a text thread. We create text threads for every transaction we have going so that our clients and you and I have a text thread. We have family text threads, right? We've got all these things. So what's the value there, do you think? And let's talk a little bit about our communication log that is a requirement in the state of Washington.
Yes.
For compliance.
So, again, if everybody has as much information as possible, then they're able to make the best decisions in any given moment, right? So, let's start with clients, because that's probably
the best place to just hang. Just do that.
Best place to be. When, as you know, in real estate, when we have a purchase or buyers that we're working with, and they want to go see houses. So oftentimes husband and wife are, working in different places, and I want to be able to facilitate conversations around whatever is going on in real estate with them. Same with sellers. On the sell side, we're arranging for showings and things like that. So making sure that we're all on the same page, and Mr. and Mrs. Seller, no matter where they're at, both have an awareness that a showing request has come up, and they can both respond. And again, we're on the same page. It happens quickly. Most of us are very text savvy. So that's probably one of the best tools that we have found as far as keeping things smooth and timely when we're working with clients. In the state of Washington, Department of Licensing requires us to have a communication log that we upload to compliance electronic file cabinet when we're done with the transaction. It becomes one of the pieces, along with all our emails and such, that we need to, part of that communication log is not just emails, it's text threads, it's messenger threads, it's any type, the written log if we have a notebook and we're writing notes about phone calls and such. All those things are considered part of the communication log. And so when the Department of Licensing comes in and audits files, they look for that. And so it really is an important thing, not just for the audit, but when there is litigation, lawsuit, paperwork has to be sent to the lawyer, judge, whomever. when you have all those communication pieces, it really presents the bigger picture. And all y'all might be surprised about how many agents do not have those pieces in place. So if you have your communication log, it's a huge piece of insurance for you.
So we've heard stories from legal counsel where you've got two realtors in court with their clients, and one of the agents had done their job completely, and they had their comm log and they had all these things, but the
opposing.
The other side, the other agent did not have theirs, even though they had a stronger case. This agent couldn't prove anything that they had said, even though some of their correspondence was with this other agent's email log. And the judge sided with the agent who had done his job correctly, because in the state of Washington, and admittedly this isn't the same way everywhere, but we're limited practicing attorneys in the state of Washington when you have a real estate license. And so as long as we're under contract, we're held to the same standard of care as a lawyer. So if we go to court, that same standard of care transfers over. So we have to have our stuff together, or the judge will, can kind of shred you if you haven't done your job. Because the one thing that most judges, I believe, can't stand is people who make a mockery of the judicial system. And if you don't do your job, or you don't do your job well, as a lawyer, you're not going to really create a lot of favor with the judge. And so we don't ever want to put our agents in that position. So we do our best to make sure that they have everything they need. And that comm log is one of the most important things. So yeah, it's kind of a tangent, but definitely important that we stress, if you're getting into real estate, try and limit your communication to two places. So you mentioned Messenger and all these different texting apps and all these things. We have some people that all they want to do is talk on Messenger, and it's like pulling teeth to get them back over to a text thread. But if you can't get them and keep them on just email and your text thread, you got to go hunting far and wide for that comm log. And it can get more and more challenging to turn that into a PDF easily, and without screenshot forever. Because some of these transactions, for example, if you're in a construction transaction, it could be 6 months of transactions back and forth. That could be brutally large.
Well, I think the other thing to know about the communication log is that it's not just the communications between real estate agent or broker and their client. It's also with the agent on the other side, or the broker on the other side of the transaction. It's all the communications with title and escrow. It's communications with the lender. So it's every piece. It's not just between broker and client.
And you have to be careful. This is where professionalism comes in. You got to be careful about what you're saying in these texts. If you're good friends with the agent on the other side, and you make some kind of off-colored comment, or something that you think is going to be wholly private, if that goes to court, it is no longer wholly private. And the other thing to remember is, if you do go to court, your phone could become part of evidence, and it's gone until that court case is done. So if you can make sure that comm log is off your phone and into the judge's hands, they likely don't have to take your phone from you. So, there's just all kinds of little things that we got to watch out for. So those are some of the techs and tools that we use, but let's talk about some of the things as to why we do what we do with these tools. Okay, so I'm thinking like our weekly review.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so you and I...
So processes around the tools.
Correct, processes. Okay. So you and I will sit down Sunday night, or sometime Sunday, and we'll just kind of look ahead at the week and just kind of make sure that we each know what's going on for each person during the week. Because there are some things that admittedly I might put on the calendar and forget to tell you about. I don't know that that's ever happened going this way, but it definitely has happened going that way. And maybe it's a guy thing. I don't know. We're special that way. But so let's talk about why that, and it's only 5 or 10 minutes of time.
Oh, yeah.
But it is so valuable.
Well, so again, it's getting on the same page.
Yeah.
You know, making sure that it's not just about knowing what you're doing,
Right.
but
It's not control.
no, but it's more around, are there things that I need to be aware of to support?
Right.
And in our case right now, we are a one-car family.
Mm-hmm.
So we do a lot of traveling. So we have to be really intentional about who's going where, when. And that can be a challenge sometimes. So making sure, again, that we can meet all the needs, not just of our family, but our offices and our agents, that becomes a critical piece. And it's not just for the week. It's also, looking ahead at a month and making sure that pieces are scheduled out so they don't overlap. Office events, personal events, all those kinds of things. And we do that same thing at the beginning of the day when you and I sit down and just do it. It's quick. It's a brief check-in. It's, what are we doing today? What are you doing today? Is there anything I need to do to help you? And then at the end of the day, that's a debrief, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, and looking towards the next day. So it's quick touch points, but it keeps us all on the same path, moving in the same direction.
Right.
And you're right, it's not a control thing, it's a partnership thing.
Right.
And so, again, that goes to mindset. How do we support one another and take care of the business and do it the best we can?
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, it's going back to workplace, I do that month at a glance for everybody, because one of the things that we found is we all get running so hard and so fast that nobody thinks to stop and do what we do, and they don't look at their calendar at the beginning of the week. And so all of a sudden, here comes a big company meeting, and it's on Wednesday, and it's Tuesday night, and they're shocked that it's the same meeting on the same Wednesday of every month for the last 4 years. So not going to name names,
No.
but yeah. So I mean, but it does happen, right?
It does.
So you, as a leadership piece and as a communication style, you need to your point earlier, you need to remind and remind and remind, right? It's no good for you to say, well, you should have known, right?
Shaming works every time.
Oh yeah, absolutely every time. So yeah, so let's let's just make sure that we're getting that information out there as many times as possible. And that can sometimes be a challenge, because some people think, well, they're adults, they're running their own business, why do I have to remind them? Well, whoever watching this podcast ever in your life who hasn't needed to be reminded of something, right? Like Mother's Day. Guys, how many of you needed to be reminded or missed? So here comes Saturday night. How many of you were in Safeway getting flowers and a card, right? So yeah, so it's just little things. We all need a little help because we can get running pretty quick.
I think it's called grace.
It is. Yeah, it is called grace. Okay, so listening to the song behind the words.
Okay, so we're kind of shifting from the mechanics of communication to the power of communication, or the essence of working and being with other human beings in that arena of communication.
That takes effort?
Well, if you want to do it well and not be really egocentric, it takes a little bit of work.
It takes a village.
It takes a village. Yeah. So there are a lot of pieces about communication. There have been books written on it. We could do a whole podcast on, a whole series on communication. But I think one of the tidbits, one of the pieces that I try to remember, is that when somebody's communicating with you, whether it's in speech or, written word or whatever it is, the words that they're sharing with you are only part of their story. It may not necessarily be everything that they're saying. So when I was in a leadership class, working on being a school administrator, one of the phrases in one of the books we were reading that really stuck with me was to listen to the song behind the words. As an example, I'm going to go back to education because I was in it for 30 years. I remember a conversation that I was having with a teacher, and she was very frustrated about something in the classroom. And as I was thinking through that conversation with her, what I came to realize was that there were a lot of other things going on in her life that were impacting how she was feeling about what was going on in the classroom. So if I didn't take into consideration all the other things that may have been happening with that individual, I would have missed the opportunity to really have a deeper conversation with her about her concerns. I would have had the right filter in how to respond. So just having an awareness that the words that people say, the words we say, comes with underlying stuff. And so if we want to be our best when we're interacting with somebody, we need to not just have the filter of mouth to mouth, ears to ears, but what's going on in the ether around that person. Taking care of the whole person, I guess, is the best way to say that. Mm-hmm. Not thinking just here, but here.
Right.
Right. So, yeah, that has always held me in good stead. The other piece is, when I'm doing training, I often also talk about responding versus reacting. So
there's a difference?
There is a difference, right? So oftentimes when we are in an emotionally charged, let's go there, conversation, it's very easy to be reactionary. In real estate, we can tend to be kind of reactionary when we're in the middle of a transaction.
Because it's deadlines and timelines and all kinds of stuff.
Those things involved. But what I know is I am not my best self when I react to somebody emotionally, right? I haven't taken the time to process. I haven't taken the time to allow maybe a little bit of logic to enter into the thought process. Mm-hmm. So on a grander scale, it's kind of like the wisdom of when you send an email that you're really passionate. I'll use the word passionate intentionally.
Flaming mad, you mean?
Oh, could be that. Write it, set it aside. Or have somebody else read it before you send it.
Well, I do that same thing with texts.
Yes.
Yeah.
And any written word.
Yep.
It's a little bit more challenging, or can be, when it's a conversation. In that case, It may be just breathing for a few seconds and getting your emotion under control, your voice lowered, and presenting or responding in a way that the other person can keep their eye on the issue, not the emotion. Mm-hmm. Right?
Sure.
So I think that can be a challenge for all of us. We are most of us, very emotional beings. And I think oftentimes we always think we're right.
What?
I know.
We're not?
Right?
Well, I am.
So, yes, exactly.
Right? Yes. Glad you agree.
So sometimes you know, just you don't always have to be right.
And even if you
And
are,
even
you
if
don't
you-
have to drive that point home.
Well, and even if you think you are, there's more than one point
Side,
of view.
yeah.
And so, you know, being willing to, again, step back, think about where that other person may be coming from, and responding to that instead of reacting to that. If at the end of the day we want to have relationships that stick and are long term and are not hurtful to the core, we need to do that. I was having a conversation with one of my sisters last week, and she said something that really resonated with me. She said, what I have come to find for me is that communication tends to be the thing that is the biggest sticking point in any relationship,
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
for the
100%.
good or the ill,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And so, and I would agree with that. It's so complicated, and emotion is wrapped up in it. So, yeah, whether it's for real estate, whether it's for with kids, whether it's with
Life in general.
life in general.
Guys tend to step that up one more level because, so speaking from a husband-wife perspective, you come into the room and you're animated about something, whether it's mad or frustrated or whatever. Most guys jump into solve mode, right? And that is probably the last place we need to jump into right out of the gun, right? So
I would encourage you not to do that.
yeah, true. So the thing that I've learned to do is if I see you come in and you are animated about something, my first question is, are we looking for a solution, or do you just need to be listened to, right? Or heard? Because guys, oddly enough, women don't always want you to solve their problems. They just want to be able to blow off some steam. So don't think you're doing some huge favor to her by telling her all the things that she should be doing, because
What's the message you're sending
Yeah.
when you do that?
You're incapable.
You're incapable.
Yeah.
Not the message that
Not
anybody
really.
wants to hear.
No, yeah, and I mean, there's no good relationship advice there, right? That is, let me fix you because I don't think you're capable, right? So that's the one piece for us guys primarily. Don't get into rescue or fix mode, right? Make sure that you ask, what outcome are you looking for here? Do you need a solution because I can put that hat on? Or do you just want to be heard because I can put my soundboard technician hat on too and I'll just listen?
Or maybe just let her go, and then when she's done saying whatever she's done saying, then ask those questions.
Oh, yeah,
You know, because
absolutely. Yeah, no, you don't. Yeah, no, you don't. You don't stop her in mid scream and go, "Oh, are you looking for a?" Yeah, no, you always let the rant happen, and then ask that question, because it just I mean, it just comes down to respect, and it just comes down to wanting to do what's best and support your spouse or even your business partner, right? I mean, maybe your business partner is the opposite sex and they are going off, and maybe they do want a solution, but you got to ask.
And I would say the same with those of us who are in leadership. It's the same with whomever we're leading or working with. You know, sometimes they are just flipping mad and they need to get it off their chest, and then we can ask, so do you want to, do you have an idea of how you're going to move forward? Do you want any, feedback, or are you good now?
One of the things that we've said often is seek first to understand, then be understood, right? So don't think that you think that you know what they want, right? Because that puts you in a position of, again, you know it, and you think they don't. So it's always good to do that. So as we wrap up, let's talk about delivery is sometimes the biggest harbinger of death of any communication style, because I might be very passionate about something and it comes across as angry or it comes across as shame or blame, because even though in my head I'm excited about it, my delivery doesn't say excited. My delivery says bad girl, right? Bad person. Swatting on the nose with the newspaper, right? So delivery is everything when you have communication. So please make sure that you are very aware of that communication piece, because it's not how it's delivered is only for you, right? I mean, you're the only one who can control that. So you can't blame someone if they don't get your meaning or take it wrong, right? It's not their fault.
Right.
So anyways, thoughts on that?
So I think, again, it goes back to knowing where your own headspace is before you interact or have an exchange with somebody. Be purposeful. If you are thinking, how is this going to be perceived by the person that I'm talking with, I think it will help put you in the best headspace for having that conversation or sharing whatever information you have.
Yeah.
And along similar lines, men and women, we deal with communication differently. We deal with a lot of things differently, but I know for Brad, he can put things in boxes. He compartmentalizes things. And so if he has a concern about, like, say, home finances, he will put that in a box, and it will not touch a box that is related to an agent issue in the office. Me, on the other hand, all of those things are related. They're all intermixed like spaghetti, and that's all in my, everything is just elevated because they all somehow touch one another. So just being aware that even in our humanness of male and female, we approach all those communication pieces differently. And again, it's an awareness. It's being able to understand either your partner, your spouse, the person you're working with, your kids. All of these things are very, all the issues that we're talking about, really, it's not just about business. It's about working in life.
Agreed.
Yep.
Agreed. Okay. Well, thank you for your time, your insight, and your wisdom.
Thank you for your time as well. Make sure you share, like, comment, follow. If you have any questions, feel free to get a hold of us.
Looking forward to talking to you again next week.
See ya.